So I'm Frank, and I run a web development consultancy that took me the longest time to admit that I wasn't going to do a product startup because, you know, consultancies aren't scalable. I mean, there's all these properties. But one thing led to another, and eventually I decided to say, you know what, I'm not going to try to put one foot in one area and so to do something with excellence. So located here, Brandon Dees works with me full-time, is up in Nashville, and we got, you know, so we're pretty small still. And people have come and gone, and we've worked on some fascinating projects. And I would say 90+% of all of our business, even our larger accounts, have all come from people who located us originally through search while they were on the look for a developer. And one of the things I've observed in the industry is to non-technical business people, every problem is, if they have a Ruby or Rails application, every problem is solved by the, well, I need a Ruby developer. So, you know, we have this insecure, you know, we're concerned about, well, maybe not that side, but like, for example, my website's too slow, I need a Ruby developer. My last developers, I don't trust them anymore, and they stole my money, and why can't they just listen and get this done? Well, I need a Ruby developer. And so, I mean, there's all these stories you can talk about how, and the relation that has to security, so is, I care about security deeply. I did a master's degree here at Tech in this topic, but I very specifically did not create a security company because no one buys security, period. Like, the only ones who do is because it's a compliance thing for them, and even then, they really don't want to buy security. They want magic pixie dust that will make their compliance issue go away. So, therefore, the only way to be able to impact society by having more secure applications is not to be a vendor of security services or products, but to be the other things that the businesses care about, and to have security as a moral stance that cannot be bent. So I spend most of my time speaking with clients about where they are in the startup life cycle, what their business model is, what their things, you know, Steve Blank talking about business model canvases, all these things that are not even Ruby development. And then our team builds out code, and then and then we have non-negotiables, like, oh, look, you're dealing with personal information. It is not your choice whether or not you are going to have, you know, encrypted records. I mean, we will do it this way, and if that's not okay, because I've had people fight me on it, the answer is we will resign. As a company, we cannot morally do this for you without taking these safeguards. And then we get to do it the right way. Because they will never agree, by and large, to pay for security because they don't see it as something that brings value. Yet, if we don't add it now, when the startup is fledgling and doesn't have a database, oh, don't worry about this, we'll just add that later. It will never be added. It will never be anyone's job to go back and change it until after there's a breach and the user database is compromised and personal information has been exposed. If we're lucky, it happens when there's thousands of users, but it could happen if the right startup goes, it could happen, you know, on a large scale. And in this community especially, You know, that's the part that I really hope that you will take home from here, is that your employers, your clients, by and large, will always want you to do something. You know, make this application do this thing, make this application, you know, solve this. They will never care as much about code craftsmanship as you need to. They will never care as much about test coverage as you need to. In fact, they will try to talk you out of doing it because it just slows down creating features. They do not understand as a whole technical debt. I hope y'all have talked about that. So technical debt is when you make trade-offs in the short run in order to get faster to a goal. And sometimes, and the debt analogy is good, because sometimes it makes sense to borrow on a credit card. But if you're constantly borrowing on that credit card, and it's a high interest rate and you never pay it back, eventually it grinds your finances to a halt. And that's the same way with technical debt in a project. You know, well, we don't need to test this so well right now because we just need it to work tomorrow for this important meeting that might raise some money. Well, you better have that working tomorrow. But the tendency is to then do that again and again and again. And now 3 months from now, you have a test suite that's out of sync. You don't have the regression stuff. Your code quality suffered because you didn't think about design, because you just had to make it work then. And it already works. Don't fix what's not broken. You will never get permission to refactor in an organization that doesn't understand that the software is a living, breathing thing. It is very difficult to explain. Anyway, wow, that was kind of a, I didn't know I was going to go there. So anyway, I'm Frank. Nice to meet everyone. So I think what I want to do is, so everyone got the sheet, and there's a couple of other things. So these are books.
Do you have any extra sheets in it?
I should have 10.
You do not get one?
So this is just a printout of one of the pages from the OWASP Top 10 document. There's a couple things that it is worth each of you to just know about. One is the OWASP, which is the an organization that they do training, and this report particularly catalogs the most common security vulnerabilities that across web applications, all of them. I'm talking Java Enterprise, I'm talking Rails, I'm talking all web applications. Some of these things, you know, Rails 4 does a pretty good job protecting you against. But other of these things, by default, you're on your own. You will end up with fundamental flaws in a Rails app that will leave it insecure. And there's some tools. A couple of tools to write down on the back of that sheet if you can. Brakeman is one. I like that one a lot. I have this one. Anyway, so we're going to talk about what is security, and we're going to look at part of a Nova special, and talk about ethics and what a data breach is. How does that sound to everybody?
Good. Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay. So one of the things that, especially if you ever read the Bruce Schneier book about Beyond Fear, you realize that security is not a Boolean state. It's not, I'm insecure, I'm secure. I'm insecure, I'm secure. That's not how it works. Unfortunately, that's how the public thinks about it. So, for example, oh, this website, is it SSL? If they think about it. I mean, a lot of people don't think about it. SSL? Oh, it's secure. Non-SSL? Oh, it's not secure. Well, that's secure against a very specific attack. Specifically, eavesdropping in the middle. But it's not secure against faults in your web application itself. So just adding SSL does not make something secure. So there's 3 questions anytime you ask yourself, is such and such secure? And it's one, is it secure against what? A specific threat at a specific thing. So for example, the SSL case, let's just say, are you secure against, so we put SSL on our web application and we're hosted on Amazon Web Services, right? Are you secure against Bob running a TCP dump on the network? Yeah. Yeah, you are secure against him, probably. I mean, we're not going to go deep into like the different cipher suites or to configure that. Are you secure against the FBI subpoenaing Amazon to turn over your SSL key subject to a terrorism investigation? Not a chance. And you won't hear about that. Are you secure against the NSA? Probably not if they can coerce other parties, third parties into. So there are vulnerabilities and that's presuming that your software system was 100% secure. It's probably not. So, so then you ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen? So that comes into threat modeling. So if our well, playing with that particular example, we'll come back to that. So, for example, if I have a SaaS product that's used by organizations throughout the world, and it becomes known that US law enforcement is constantly wiretapping my system and taking out data, then we can go out of business because of the loss of trust. Because that's a problem in that particular case. And compared to what alternative? So, for example, anytime you're evaluating a security system or a stance, what are the alternatives that you can choose from? So it's not a static Boolean yes or no thing. And you have to think about who your adversaries are. So, for example, people pick really, really, really terrible usernames and passwords, or more likely passwords. And they proceed to use them on multiple sites. So now, if your database gets breached and someone gets hashed usernames and passwords, one, they probably choose short passwords. And with hash generations, such as I think the current fastest supercomputer in the world is operated by the Chinese, and it can generate billions of hashes per second using like GPU processing. So the ability to brute force offline, even against good hashes, has increased if an adversary is able and willing to spend $100,000 or more on a password cracking infrastructure, or to use stolen Amazon Web Services things that are. So those attacks are very real. Anyway, any questions on this concept yet?
The password generator, I get kicked out after 2 failed attempts. How's the billion gonna work?
They have stolen your users table, and they have and you have presumed that they know any site-wide secret and are able to now focus on cracking individual passwords. It is made worse if someone uses a fast hash such as SHA-1 and doesn't properly use SALT. I've seen that in real-life Rails applications. If someone uses Devise or has secure password, by default that will use bcrypt, which is better. It will have a built-in per account SALT, and when you don't do that, You have other disclosures, such as if you use a plain hash in just a site-wide. So if you're like, great, okay. Does everyone know how hashing works?
Yep.
Okay, good. So if your site has like a site key and it's some long like AL12 dot 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 dot, you know, one of those things, right? That's great. So if you don't have a per record salt though, and your password system looks a little bit like PW equals hash of user password and site key. This hash is a one-way function. So if this is what you do, and this is a super common pattern. Oh, thank you. Then what will end up happening is, what happens when two users have the same password? If you're looking at the long list of hashes, you can tell because the hash will be the same. So that is a leak of information. That is an insecure handling of user passwords, even though you're using a hash. And so what bcrypt does, fortunately, I mean, you can still use a site key. It fortunately takes care of that by default. And more importantly, bcrypt over SHA-1. Do you know why we use, I mean, SHA-1 we used for passwords for a while. Do you know why it's not the recommended password hashing mechanism now? SHA-1 is fast. Back to, you know, the billions per second. It's a fast hashing algorithm. So you can crack it very quickly. Bcrypt is specifically slowed down. It is overly computationally expensive to just create a hash because you want to, and it has rounds. So it's okay if it takes a second to generate the hash for a user to log in, or fractions, large fractions of a second. It's not okay if it takes 1 millisecond because one, the user can't perceive that difference, and two, when the case that I'm cracking large groups of passwords, it makes a huge difference. So it's a way of tar pitting an adversary in an offline attack mode. So that's why you don't do this.
What kind of, this is just random questions.
Okay.
What kind of security is used in banking, like online banking? It's just something I
We'll get to
Right.
the answer is no single security countermeasure is used to create a secure system.
Okay.
It is a collection of things. So this is one aspect. The SSL is another aspect. System administration and patching. There's a huge number of things that have to be done to maintain a secure system at that scale. One of the mistakes that is super common in banking is, ironically, that from the user account thing, often they will restrict you to, like, it infuriates me when some site that I care about, like my bank, will only let me have a 14-character password, and I know that we're already in a world where 11 characters is getting into the verge of where, you know, offline attacks are going to be able to discover them. And I routinely use 50-character passwords on other sites that I care way less about than my bank. But, and there's reasons for that. But the truth is,
You can memorize that many, or you have like a encrypted document that
I use a
copy and
password
paste?
manager.
Is it a phase? Like a phrase?
I personally use, so the threat that I'm protecting myself against is that if I use a pattern or repeated the passwords often across a bunch of locations, that I don't control their security. So if that gets breached, someone can try me in different places. So I use a password vault on my phone and computer, and I focus on having just one really awesome, you know, passphrase that's highly complex that I remember, in my head. So that's the something I know, something I have, which is the possession of the digital password vault, and then I use that software to manage. So people call that like 1.5 factor authentication. Another tool I use that we can talk about is I use this for work. This is a FIDO Alliance compatible universal 2-factor authentication token made by YubiKey. And this is the Neo, so this also doubles as my OpenPGP smart card, which is, if anyone was ever in the military or been around like DoD, you know about like the CAT card system. Like there's something similar floating around. So that's not that one. That white one is different. And so that's an open source version of that would slip into a card reader. This does the same thing, and it's actually an RSA crypto card where the crypto is carried out on the card itself.
So that's an RSA?
Well, it's not. It's Open PGP smart card and a universal 2-factor FIDO Alliance compatible second factor.
So you're talking about those RF keys, like the ones that you would have with the numbers that rotate?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Like
if we watch this,
you would get on.
so I plug this in here. Now I use the Dvorak keyboard, so we'll see. I have to remember to switch to QWERTY. But this is recognized as a keyboard. So when I do that, it types the code. And every time I press it, it types a different code. So what happens is with a web application, that code can be verified. It's a one-time thing. And so instead of reading a number, this gizmo types it because it's recognized as a keyboard. And so for internal use Rails applications,
So that's
which
your
is a lot.
password? So that's your password?
No, this is a one-time code.
And it rotates.
Yeah, it will never repeat. But it's a time series that's verifiable. And what then goes is it's something I have, my password. No, something I know, my password. Something I have, my universal 2-factor token. And the reason it's called universal 2-factor is with the old RSA keys, each system would have to have their own. So in a pathological case where you had to work with a lot of secure systems, you'd have a key ring full of RSA tokens for each of them. Whereas now you can have one little device that is your credential for multiple unrelated systems. And we have Rails application clients where back to the moral stance. Oh, you have an application that has staff members logging into it. You will be buying these things or something like it, or we will not be your developers.
Oh, that's good. They mean a lot.
Yeah. No, it's fine. And so far that has gone pretty well. And I can think of at least one case, it worked out really well because, especially when they found out, wait, you mean we're doing the same sort of security as Google's doing? Like, yeah. So it was a win, so they didn't appreciate it at the time. And
But if we were to hire you, would you implement this for us?
good, yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay.
But you're still rules to the fence.
Do you build an entire website, or do you just focus on the security part? So when they
We build the entire, we start with user story writing and build from there. Because no
There's
one
no
will
way-
hire you just for the security. Like, I've talked with people who reached out about like an audit engagement or something, and it almost never goes anywhere because they're almost always looking for magic pixie dust. They're not looking for a holistic, from your business model to your how you developed your code in the first place, comprehensive information security stance to help protect your organization for real, as opposed to compliance.
I have a question that may be out of sequence, but if you start with security in mind, how much overall does that add to the cost of an application?
If
And
you
it-
truly start with it in mind, almost none. Because most of it you could be. The hard part is
Putting it into an animal once it's
Mhm.
already built. So like they're worried about you going into Amazon if Amazon wasn't secure or something, and just, you're like you have to go and like re-implement all the code, like I hate ERB kind of thing. Where you have to.
it's just really hard to bolt on at the end because one, you have to wrap your head around it. And by the way, you could have security completely in mind from the beginning, do everything you know of to protect. I mean, this becomes the defender's dilemma, right? The defender has to be right 100% of the time. The attacker chooses the time and place and the mechanism. And the biggest threat is often the insider threat. So, literally someone who works. I mean, look at Edward Snowden. Worked for the NSA. Like, if the NSA can't stop, national secrets from leaking against an insider threat, what does any of us or our prospective clients? I mean, their entire budget is to prevent stuff like that, and it's billions of dollars. How, a startup that has hundreds of thousands of dollars, what chance do we really have, against keeping your database administrator from, going rogue and taking your, customer data? So, that's food for thought. So this is kind of the CIA triad. And when you think about security, typically it's taught in the forms of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And these words matter because you have to have them all or it's insecure. And the availability is the big one. So security has impact on performance, and because if it's not available, if the web application goes down because they don't have enough server resources, that's a security problem as much as it is a DevOps problem. Because that also means a denial of service attack can happen and take off something when it's not appropriate.
This is off a little bit,
Okay.
but do you have a way to protect against a DDoS attack? Is
There are tools and techniques.
But are there effective tools and techniques?
Well, a true DDoS, well, that's the problem with DDoS, is it not? I mean, there are, a Rails application living on its own is not going to defend itself against a DDoS attack.
Right.
To defend against a DDoS attack is going to need to involve server infrastructure and network architecture. And there are vendors who specialize in helping with that. Things like Cloudflare are actually pretty good at the low level. Having content that's proxied via CDNs, so it's distributed widely, so there's no one bottleneck. So the biggest thing about DDoS is not having bottlenecks to the extent that you can. But no, that's sort of the attack that's hard. And I don't know that DDoS scare me as much as some of the silent data thefts that come through like SQL injection and other web application vulnerabilities, where someone actually steals data from you.
Does a company ever ask you to try to hack into their system to prove it that it's flawed?
That's called penetration testing. It's not really an area that we've seriously tried to offer services in.
But there are people who
There
do
are
that.
people who do.
Professional hackers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they work for banks.
They do. Kevin Mitnick is one of those now. You can read his book even. So look at this later. So this slide is very important because oftentimes when you're reading about security, about information classification, you hear about secret and top secret, government style things. And then the book says, oh, by the way, there's commercial classifications too, but it's kind of hand wavy and off to the next topic. And state law will tell us things about PII. This is stuff that the law considers, but it's very hard to to understand holistically what your situation is. So I put this together. And so this is very similar to Georgia Tech's, but I typically consider 5 levels of information, and the lines are very important. Business owners, especially entrepreneurs with a budget, like to think that they can choose the level that they want to protect everything on this list. But the truth is, the only things that are truly discretionary to them are above the yellow line, and the things that are below the red line can send someone to jail. So it's very important to understand holistically. So public information, okay, stuff we want to put out publicly. Internal use information, so this is stuff about the business. You know, yeah, I mean, if our competitor found out about our business plan or like who we're talking to, that could be a real problem. But no one's going to care, I mean, other than the company itself, right? Confidential information that customers consider confidential. This, between these lines, is kind of the uncanny valley. It's not public information or private information, you know, like names and social or social security numbers and stuff, but it's like, maybe if I set my privacy setting on my Fitbit to not share my exercise with someone, this is an example, I'm not saying Fitbit has a problem, but if I have one of those devices and I set the settings and there was like something with the web app and they changed their privacy policy and like all of a sudden, like, I don't know, and I really feel like that was just unconscionable breach of my privacy. Like, I can't believe you just published that I don't run enough, like, you know, for everyone to see. Then I could feel really violated, despite the fact that the law doesn't care about this. And I might blog about how your company is so insecure and doesn't care, and tell my friends, well, don't use them. You know, it's terrible. It's like that sort of negative thing can happen. And then we get into PII and then super highly sensitive information like encryption keys and server secrets and admin passwords. I mean, this is the stuff that, you know, the hackers are really after often. So,
I have a question about
yes.
this whole jail thing. So if your data was stolen from a site that you own, who goes to jail? The site owner?
So,
Like
because I actually am, I have a website, I own a company that I gather data of children.
yes,
So I'm COPA compliant.
correct.
But if somebody were to steal data,
You
would
probably
I go to
would.
jail,
You
or-
probably not right now.
Yeah, but, not a convicted felon.
The financial repercussions right now could be huge. Like going out of business, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines for having put having had a data breach. I mean, we're talking bankrupting level like risk, but probably not going to jail.
But why would I be fined if somebody smarter than me would be like hacking into my server? And I know I would be fined if I sold data of children under the age of 13. Like that
It depends on so the question becomes, were you negligent in your handling of the information? And when you built your system, if you told developers, no, don't add security, I don't want to pay for it, let's just add this, throw it up on Heroku, don't care about anything at all. If that goes to court at some point in the future, and your developer's like, hey, the boss lady said, don't do anything, like just fast, feature, and we knew better, but we didn't do it, then I don't know where that would go. I'm not an attorney.
I would go with it.
So, like, it definitely would be the end of a lot of stuff. So, that's kind of back to the moral stance. Like, if you take reasonable measures, and I'll go show you. So this is what Georgia law says about. This is just the data breach law, and this is part of the notification. And they consider social security number, driver's license, or state identification number, any account number, credit card number, debit card number, if that was enough to do something, and account passwords or personal information numbers. So if you have account passwords or access codes then and it gets breached, then under state law, you have a data breach and you must notify. On the credit card stuff, you can have a PCI breach, and there's contracts on dealing with fines and consequences for having had the data breach. There's talk right now about whether or not Target data breach was enough to bankrupt Target. I suspect there will be a negotiated deal. They're not actually going to, but if they literally enforce the fine for every single account number, even Target could be taken down by that. The government, the FCC, has the authority to demand annual detailed security audits of any company that has a breach for 20 years. There was a case where, I don't want to say the wrong company, I think it was Snapchat, the photo sharing service. And it was supposed to, am I thinking the right one? Like you share a photo and then it like goes away?
Yeah,
Snapchat.
They weren't going away.
It's that there were ways to circumvent and they wouldn't go away, but because they claimed so strongly that these photos were ephemeral in nature
And were not stored.
Right? You ended up in a situation where the government stepped in and said, wait a second, under our authority, we don't even have to wait for Congress, under our authority to like police false advertising, you were lying to the public about this, and there are consequences. So basically saying that your system is secure and then having someone smarter than you actually break it shows that your system wasn't secure, therefore you lied and misled the public, therefore federal various agencies of the federal government can take action against you for misleading the public at scale. So it's not everything has to be a security law in order to impact like the risks that a startup can face.
Their PR person said it wasn't their app directly. It was like third-party users that were adding attachments to Snapchat. I don't even know any of them.
Well,
that
and then
exist.
you can screenshot and say.
Right. So basically, I don't know that there was I haven't looked deeply to know if there was a technical answer, other than having not claimed that this photo stream was, inherently ephemeral in nature when it couldn't actually be provably and absolutely ephemeral. That's where that came in. It's a tough spot, but that's how that happened. Anyway,
It's also a deep dive into your database.
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm not saying they did wrong. I'm just like, that's an example of where a federal agency decided to take action, and it has severe consequences, for.
Okay, yeah, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah. Let's watch this. The class watched an excerpt from the Nova Special Rise of the Hackers, specifically the Mat Honan interview segment. You can find it on the PBS website or iTunes. The episode goes on to talk about Stuxnet, which is the first probably computer virus that is affects the physical world as a cyber warfare weapon, and it was the engineered virus that actually is floating around a lot of Windows stuff still. And does anyone here know what Stuxnet is? You might.
Can you say it again?
Stuxnet.
It's the power plant.
It targeted the Iranian nuclear power plant centrifuges. It's a Windows virus that spread. It jumped the air gap. It managed to get into Iran. It managed to jump the air gap, because it's not like the nuclear facility was on the internet. And once it got in, it pulled off. It recognized the specific model numbers of the Siemens PLCs that were controlling it. So anyways, it's a very sophisticated computer virus that is very much, no one I don't think knows for sure, very, very, very much suspected to have been developed by secret government agencies for the purpose of taking out the centrifuges. And what it did was it did a lot of, once it got in, recognized, it then watched for a month just the numbers, just quiet and recorded. And then it pulled like a movie stunt where it would play back those numbers as it adjusted the speeds of the centrifuges till they started vibrating. And it was designed not to make the nuclear power plant blow up, but it could have been. So
how did it jump the air gap if it was deployed via the internet? How did it get into an offline system?
That's why it spread to as many computers as possible. And then we just look, hey, are you a computer that's the control system for the Iranian nuclear power plant that I'm targeting? If not, I'm just going to infect anything I can from you, but otherwise just be dormant. And so then it would replicate, and it would spread.
Like if it got in my computer, I'd just be a carrier. I wouldn't even know.
Until your
Like a real
employee that
virus.
finally gets it and plugs into the system in Iran.
Yeah.
Is that what shut down the grid in Brazil?
That's
I'm
pretty
not
smart.
sure what that one.
And then it gives like a
Electricity
fake
grid
message
that
saying
shut down,
everything's
like,
normal while it
3
breaks
cities in
everything.
Brazil 2 years
Smart.
ago for like 3 days.
So anyway, yeah, check out this episode. The Nova episode is fascinating.
So
So
what-
it's
so what
called
happened?
Rise of the Hackers.
What
There was
ended
such
up happening?
conspiracy theories. What about
They just
when
broke
New York
the
shut down for
centrifuge?
3 days?
Yeah.
How bad
So
is it?
let's just kind of freeform this. I mean, I can pull back up slides, but I don't have to. Like you said, those particular
Probably the U.S. and Israel.
Yeah, those particular vulnerabilities are closed, but that's not the point of showing that to you. The point is, think about that pattern. Amazon, they were able to compromise his Amazon account not because of a technical failure of the software that implements Amazon. It was a business process design failure.
Isn't that how like all those nude celebrity pictures and stuff, they just got an email that like appeared to be from Apple and so they logged in. Like it's usually not really like you're saying, like it's not really a breach in Apple's security, it's just that someone
It's not a technical
sent a
breach.
phony email that someone just fell for, typed in their password.
That's one theory of how it happened. That would be phishing. That's not the only way to do that. So let's and I'm not going to presume this is the exact way. Like I haven't looked deeply into that breach. But let's say that you have a very attractive actress, you know, who's using Apple, and it becomes them. What do we also know about her? Just general, not naming someone specifically. They're probably pretty public, right? So one day, the software said, hey, would you like to fill in some security questions for our password reset? Oh, sure. So this person, who's just like any one of our siblings, you know, except their job makes them more public eye, answers the questions. What is your grandmother's maiden name? What is, you know, on what street did you grow up? What's your favorite color? What was your first pet's name? Now, we get into pretexting, because that's not really secret for anyone. It's really not secret for celebrities, because the public is interested in them. Where did they live? Where did they grow up? You know, who was their family? She mentions on you know, people look at photos to see what color is predominant all the time. Maybe that's her favorite color. Next thing you know, boom, answered the question, password is reset, you're in. You have taken over her identity just based on information. Because it's not really secret. Password resets are an Achilles heel. And there's not a lot of good answers of how to do that is not also hostile to user experience, because people forget their own password.
I kept getting hacked before because my Yahoo account I didn't know how to reset the password settings. Like my favorite sport was soccer, and I never changed that. So any password forever that my loophole was to reset through Yahoo, I couldn't remember. I started writing on my Facebook wall like, fuck you, like whoever's doing this.
You know, if you want to make a lot of money, you should set up.
I didn't know how it was
security
happening, and then I get locked out. I was like, sending it.
Just be like, I'll
I
give
already
you
got
a
it, it's
little
over now.
key thingy.
But now Google has
Your favorite,
double
here you
encryption
go.
where you have to put on your phone.
I'm sure
Good
people,
luck
I mean,
if
at
you
this
need
point,
to
we
check
would
your
think
phone
that they
too.
would have like
It'll get better over
corporate level
time.
security for their stuff.
You don't know. I mean,
Well,
should. I mean, they're just normal people too. I
No,
mean,
they're
okay.
well, I
From a
know
standpoint.
not famous people who've gotten hacked.
Yeah.
Who don't even really have a lot of money and
Yeah, my
sort of
first
like,
Facebook was
why bother to hack you? You know, I received an email asking me to wire money because someone was stuck in Europe and
It wasn't real.
and they claimed, I was like, why did you send me that email? Like I asked the person a year later and they were like, oh, I got hacked and I never went to Europe. And I was like, why would anybody bother to hack
You
you?
never gave the Nigerian prince any money?
It must
So
have been tons of
the
people
mistake that you're making is a classic one, and it's hard for most people because, by and large, in society, you know, we grow up and we're mostly safe most of the time, and it's hard to imagine that we would be the targets of an attack, of a con, of a. But the truth is, they're not targeting you. They're targeting a lot of people that are like you. So it's the, so let's tell this back to your day job. You know, you have a Rails application, just a generic one, right? You know, small, fun web application. And a vulnerability comes out, you know, file existence disclosure in Sprockets or something. This is a recent one that was real. It's not that they're trying to attack you specifically. It's that they're trying every door on the internet to see which one pops. And so you have, and now it's not even it's not a them, it's this robot that they've built that tries every door and every lock to see which ones pop open, and then, you know, says, hey boss, here's something to check out. So then, you know, someone back in, you know, somewhere in Eastern Europe goes and starts to poke around. You know, are they going to mine bitcoins on your server? You're lucky. Do you have data that they want to steal because they have access to your thing? Oh, look, they have user accounts. Wow, they have bank account information because, again, someone, you know, you get into that sort of thing. So it's not that they necessarily targeted you or your company. It's that you were discovered to have a door that popped open, and then they went to go poke around to see what was there.
You know, if people put that much effort into it and got a real job, they would.
I don't know. When I was
Nothing pays
read it, so in when I graduated, I haven't read some of these reports in a long time. Worldwide cybercrime proceeds was I think I'm remembering this right. It was $109 billion from cybercrime.
Is it from Russia?
A lot of it's from Russia. And the funny
Russian
thing,
mafia.
it is the Russian mafia.
KGB is interesting.
And the and others. And the interesting thing was that you mentioned the mafia. You know, historically, organized crime was like corruption and graft and prostitution and all these other, you know,
Gambling.
like high sin type crimes.
Tangible things.
Yes. Cybercrime makes more money than that. So, and it's safer. And you can do a lot of damage from the safety of a internet connected location in Romania, where even if the US, you know, scamming a bunch of Americans that you're never going to meet, and even if, you know, law enforcement gets onto you, you know, what are the chances that the local law enforcement or in that country are going to do anything to arrest or extradite you? Pretty low.
Well, there's
Because you're
some
contributing to the economy. You're
extradition
buying a lot of
countries.
stuff in their economy, and you're like just a well of money
Yeah.
stealing directly from the U.S.
I would do it from Venezuela.
I would
because they can't
tap
extradite.
that oil. Just let it spout. Door.
So,
Huh? Venezuela. They
Oh,
can't, it's a
Venezuela.
non-extradition country. They can't extradite me, and I can just sit there and make a bunch of money.
maybe.
It's like,
Yeah, then the whole pesky moral sense.
You'd be able to get more fun.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
would be a really good hacker, actually.
Basically,
I could really do the whole phone scam, resetting passwords.
If you like that kind of stuff,
I like when they
I don't
Read-
like it.
well,
Nor would I
read-
admit deleting it.
okay. Well, read Kevin Mitnick's book, The Ghost in the Machine, I think. It's a fascinating look. He was famous for, he went to prison, but He's out. He's a security consultant. He was a famous early stage hacker back in the day, and literally almost all of his exploits were social engineering. Classic. I mean, definitely not a technical expert, and those guys are real too. Like, so anyway, I'm looking at time, and there's lots of directions we could take this, and honestly, I could talk for the next 4 hours and depress you even more. But what do y'all want to talk about? Like, what caught your attention? What's on your mind?
Why don't you walk us through one example of in a Rails app of
Yeah,
at
sure.
least a simple vulnerability that we could potentially deal with as well.
JoJo's getting her Google search of a life of crime ready.
I know.
She's looking at countries too that don't have extradition. We started most likely.
Nice.
Like, I can shoot, There was a program in the movie, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the program Asphyxia. Was that a real program?
Not to my knowledge.
Is there one like that?
I haven't actually seen the movie.
Is there a program that can like collect your information, like a worm that goes into your computer?
I mean, it's called spyware.
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes the representation of security topics in movies is laughable sometimes. That's why I said not to my knowledge without having seen it. But yeah, there are real threats that sometimes are worse than fiction, and sometimes fiction catches up. You know, the classic insider threat. You know, you have movies like, was Harrison Ford in a movie called Firewall, where like he was a bank executive and
Where are
like,
my
family
children?
gets-
Yeah.
Like, that's an extreme
Yeah.
version. More likely they're going to call up, and more likely they would call up somebody who works there and says, hey, I'm so-and-so executive, I'm locked out of my account, I'm going into a really important meeting right now, can you reset it? And they'll have pretext enough that they know like information about that person to do that. And if the organization doesn't have a security posture, I'm not saying they should, but an organization that doesn't have a security posture is like, think about is if.
So everybody's like verbal passwords?
Well, like imagine that you're on the military or something like that, and everyone has to have an ID badge. Then the guards at the gate need to turn away the director of national security if he doesn't have his ID badge on. Like, it doesn't matter that they recognize him. You don't have your ID badge, sir. And if they don't have a culture that strong, then people who tend to have authority will tend to bypass the security system, at which point now your security system starts to get brittle fast. Like that is a way that it can be potentially breached. So
They would turn away the director of CIA.
I don't know.
Sure,
This is an
yeah.
example.
Right.
I'm sure he has his ID badge with him all the time. Because
Right,
he's,
or retina scan or some shit.
so
If he was a really good leader, he'd be like, you're getting a raise, man, but I'm pissed at you. We'll be back tomorrow.
Where's my badge?
yes, it's an example. So
Well, one real world example that I know of that startups actually face problems is if you're collecting, if you have your own credit card data collection and you're going through a merchant service like Bank of America or whoever, they don't verify your credit cards for you. So it'll be 3 months before they verify if you have credit card fraud. So there's a startup, Synapio, down the road. They had $80,000 worth of credit card fraud, and they took it out of their account.
yep.
3 months afterwards. First you have to pay it up front, and then you'll get hit.
Yeah, so they were like budgeting, thinking they had that money.
No, they didn't budget. They took the loss.
Well, I just mean like, they obviously thought they had that money, and then when they realized they didn't, it's like, I'm sure it was pretty harsh reality.
A little pit in the stomach.
And that's the harsh reality. Waking up broke.
Let me look at this. It's been a few months since I've used this, guys, so I'm going to try to direct this pretty. So basically, I had a nice scaffolded, just basic, this post where this user. Okay. So here I am, and this is the home page, right? And if we go to a new post, you have to log in. So I'm going to go ahead.
Your password is long.
I don't know that that's my password for this account.
This is what you kind of can do to fix that user problem.
We're going to change the password to ABC123456. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm logged in as this first user in the system tester. Okay, so I'm going to post, and this is a. If we go to the post view, notice that I have some posts here, and hello, and this is actually from the last presentation, but I can do a post and say, this is my test, at the TTS, December 2014, create the post, and if we go back, we'll see that this was there. So the idea is I'm posting and they are staying on my private post. And if we go and look at the post controller, notice that the posts have this filter where the user is the current user, so that they can, so instead of current user dot, they just did it this way, okay? And we're gonna run, mentioned Brakeman. So I'm gonna run Brakeman, and Brakeman finds, let me do this into, let me do it as an HTML report so you can see it. So, yay, we're done, right? There are no security vulnerabilities in this application. It says so right here, security warnings, 0. So that, that looks for a lot of common problems that would happen in a Rails application, like using unsafe constantize and other things. It'll catch a lot of stuff. So we're golden. Ship it.
Is this free?
Yeah, it's a get, which one, Brakeman?
Yeah.
Yes. It's a gem that you should all be running all the time.
Ship it.
Very, very frequently, I will say, about code that's written by other companies, Brakeman will find at least 6 or 7 things wrong with the application. And we're talking fundamental, just bad idea to do it that way, problems with the code. Yeah, it's a very useful tool to help guide your coding. And well, let's do something malicious.
Why not?
Okay. So I'm gonna log into an incognito window. Yeah. I'm gonna user.last u dot. So this is the hacker. It says password to the same thing.
So that you gave the password to the hacker?
Is that like real? If they like write a program, is that real?
Depends on their motivation. They're just people. I mean, it's someone who, it could be all, they could be they could be secret. You never know about them, or they could be looking for glory. At which point they might do some sort of tagging behavior. The ones that are completely silent, that you never know were there, are some of the scarier ones.
I think that's the one.
Like snakes too.
Like snakes.
Like a knot.
So yeah, you have the teenager that deletes Mat Honan's account, and then you have the cat burglar that steals the entire database and sells piecemeal on the black market, but does it in such a way that it doesn't point out where the breach there or something. And you have people that take out Target and put malware on the self-checkout, or no, that was Home Depot. Malware on the self-checkout lanes, collecting payment card data for everyone who checked out through that.
How did they do
I must say that's kind of brilliant. I'm just saying. I'm gonna give them a little bit of credit. You have to admit it was
Well, the
But
creativity.
how did they do that? Did they do that manually by going in and,
I'm not sure that's been made public.
well,
Exactly.
do you know?
Well, probably,
she said to you no.
you think they probably got.
So
She doesn't
I
think
can say on the Target breach example, it was traced back to a third-party vendor had some weak password policies, and they had access to get behind the firewall at Target, and that so they hopped to another company that was a vendor to get into the network, and then from there to get access to put code. And the cash registers often run the embedded version of Windows XP. And if you know anything, you know Microsoft is not supporting or updating Windows XP at all anymore, and often these retailers have no intention of upgrading anytime soon because so they have fundamental vulnerabilities. So there's probably a 0-day or some other sort of vulnerability that was used to install the malware, and the malware took advantage of Windows XP's lack of internal security. So it was able to remain able to remain in place for a long period of time.
I thought there was one of those retailers that someone manually had gone through a checkout line and somehow.
I'm not sure.
I know ATMs all have like a fake scanner on top of
The skimming devices?
Yeah.
I always give it a little tug to make sure, but I don't know how.
You do?
Yeah.
Huh?
I always grab the outside and I tug it a little bit to see if it pops off.
Of the
You ever
Like
found
the
one that pops
ATM,
up?
like if you have like a plastic block in front of the card reader, I'll grab it and I'll pull it. I mean, I won't like yank it, but the idea is I want to know that it's a permanent part of the machine, not just something that's like
Has
been.
anybody seen you do this?
Have you ever found one
You
fall
might
out?
have been
Well-
trying to install
Well,
something on
the
You ever
bank
tried to
has
pop one
some of
off?
their cameras right there.
Yeah, you're gonna get yourself in trouble.
No, I do something like that. What I normally do is I just look around as I'm approaching. If I see people just camped out, sitting in a car,
Yeah.
and you look
yeah.
suspicious, like you may have a laptop right there, and go someplace else.
Well,
Because you might be collecting data, like it shoots at
You might.
a certain radius.
Have you ever popped one off?
no. It's probably not an effective countermeasure.
It might backfire. Really, your intention is good.
that makes me make super glue.
Well, what do you think about gas stations? 'Cause they steal a lot of shit too.
One of my homeboys got his all his money took out of his bank account like that.
From a gas station?
That's why I use credit card.
That's why you
not
don't use
debit
debit card. Yeah, I use credit every time.
Yeah, that's a toughie. I end up using a credit card too. It's security by insurance. I mean, the insurance will put your money back.
Yeah.
It's basically
It's
how the banking
way
system
easier
works.
not to pay something than to give me my money back.
Yes.
I would like my money back now.
Yes, exactly. I had a debit card, a business-related debit card, actually, ironically, that I never used. Apparently got run in. Here's the funny thing: I've never once, had a significant charge. Well, no, that's not true. On my credit card, that wasn't mine. That was like fraud. I did have it on a debit card that I never used, and let me tell you how fast I called the bank. And it took a week to put the money back, and
One week,
that's
that's all your money.
a long week.
How long do you got to prove it?
How long ago was that?
2010.
They make you prove that it wasn't you?
It's a little different.
Well,
It was also different because it was a small business account. It wasn't a personal. So they waited to the end of the investigation to put the money back, rather than for a consumer account where they put the money back and then do the investigation.
But yeah, they could have just saw the trends and saw that, oh, he's never really purchased anything.
I've never been in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you buy 15,000 racquetballs?
No, I didn't.
Yes, of course.
Alright, Gina.
No, the funniest one that was like, someone got a free. So this was back when the Surface first came out, Microsoft Store at Linux. This one's hilarious. This wasn't fraud. This was like, how did y'all make this mistake? But I used American Express card because I was buying a copy of Windows 8 because I wanted to run it in a virtual machine so I could test some software on it. Apparently, I'm like the only person who went and bought a copy of Windows 8 this way. They're like, wait, don't you want this? But anyway, what ended up happening is they go to run, but they were very busy. So I saw the the card swiped, and then he swiped it again, thinking it went through. And then later, I found out someone, the next customer in line behind me or something, they accidentally charged my card for their computer.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't a big deal. I first called American Express and said, hey, I think this was an accident, but this one's kind of a big one. I can't just let this one sit. And then I talked with the Microsoft store, and they're like, well, we can't do anything. Like, you can come and do. I'm like, listen, this is not my computer. I did not buy this from you. Like, it's not, I don't know how it happened, whatever. And it's like, I've already called American Express. So it ended up, they had to get manager approval to like refund it because like, well, you'll have to bring it back. Listen, lady, it's not, I don't buy a computer from you. You just charged my card for it.
Right.
And
I went to, just recently, like in the last few months, went to a store that sells athletic wear, and they didn't have what I wanted online, but they were like, we have this great new way we can charge you now, and it'll be sent to your address.
yeah.
We could charge you now.
Yeah, they like
Great new way.
They swiped my card,
Yeah, they did.
Well, now there's like,
and they
more
couldn't
date,
get
like
it,
Apple Pay.
but they
and all
couldn't
that.
get it to go through. And a few days later, I received an email: your blah de blah size 12 is coming in the mail. And I'm like, well, I didn't order it, and they had a different person's name. I mean, it was clearly
Right.
And my card hadn't gotten charged, but their system was, it was brand new when they were
Right.
using it, hadn't been fully tested. So
Yeah.
that's not even fraud.
No, it's not. It's a mistake, and it's and
System error.
yeah. So anyway, I don't know how we got on that person. Oh, what else was I going to show you? Okay, so I'm the hacker now. Got it? So test. Oh, let me log in. Hacker.
Probably not the smartest username to have as
As a hacker.
This is a demo app. I mean, there's not a lot of smart going on.
Hide out the
So, la.
Not a hacker.
Hi there.
Not actually a hacker.
Yeah.
I would
So.
like to be your friend.
Okay, so now we see this post is on my wall, right? So I go and over to the other window and refresh my page, and no big deal, right? So now we have I'm going to tell you, we have a we have a cross-site scripting vulnerability on this, so I'm going to edit this, put in a script tag. So cross-site scripting vulnerabilities frequently happen when people want rich text editors for their users to be able to edit, and so then it's like, how do you filter what HTML they put in? So we're just going to do an alert box. That's the dumbest thing ever. Normally, JavaScript, is it single quote or double quote? So update the post. So on there, there's no, but if I go back to here, oh, maybe I fixed the cross-site scripting. Oh well. But it's, imagine that was a cross-site, well, let's go put the cross-site scripting back in. There we go. So it's on my page, so no big deal, right? I mean, why would I care? So what, you can cross-site script yourself. It's not showing up on anyone else's. So yeah, let's not prioritize that feature to fix or anything. So, and we'll go back over to our other user. And yep, nothing wrong. It doesn't see it. So now, let's go and edit this post and do a little view page. And post title and post description. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the developer tools. And in this form, I'm going to put a live coding is always risky, y'all. Form, accept, fields, equal for. So, I'm sure some of y'all have seen like the fancy proxy servers. It is. So what I did not use anything other than Chrome, and I added a field that wasn't there. So anyone who says, oh, you have to have all these fancy tools to be able to attack a protected attributes situation doesn't know what they're talking about. So this is because I tried to view a post that's now on someone else's wall. But it was just on mine. So who wants to guess what just happened?
Change the user ID to
the other user. So even if I couldn't with certainty change the post to see, I was able to inject a post with a malicious payload onto another user's account with a vulnerability that only impacted myself. And again, basic stuff. Protected attributes would have stopped this. Proper access control and like can rules would have helped stop this. And so, but the point to remember is the Brakeman. We'll run Brakeman again to make sure this is still true. It may report something now. Bundle Brakeman. Let's see. It's still reporting 0 security vulnerabilities in the application. So, ship it. So that's just a simple example. We could go a lot deeper, go into like how to fix these things. But that's a lot of stuff that you can explore. Like literally read the security guide. Pay attention to these things. My point of this talk was to be more holistic. This stuff is real. If you want to look deeply at, security vulnerabilities you can avoid, look at the RailsGoat project. It has a tremendous number of, and the concept with RailsGoat is this is an insecure application that's of some substance. Like it has features like you would really want in a real thing, but done in an insecure way. And so it's about understanding vulnerabilities both from a point of recognizing them and from a point of how you fix them. And it's an open source project. So, questions? We'll get more code.
Yeah, that was helpful.
That was really good.
Very interesting.
Scared us, so I think we can
I tend to be I think it was James Edward Gray posted a tweet, and then one of my coworker Brandon said, "Oh yeah, we're going to work on this and that." He was like, "How do you become a Rails security expert?" And I think I replied something very depressing, like, "Be careful what you ask for. The world is a dark and lonely place." You know, but no, the truth is, okay. The truth is, paying attention to these things is important. Doing few basic things you can do will make you a lot safer than others, and that you really have to draw for yourself like a moral stance in line, like the standard I hold myself up to because of how deep I am in this space may be higher than one of you would hold yourselves to, but you still should have your own line in the sand where you will say, I hear what you're saying, but I can't morally do that for you because I know that's not enough to protect the users from these bad things that can happen. And then that's the point. That's the big point.
So what do you think about programs like CISSP or the Ethical Hacker program? Are they worth?
CISSP is, for those who don't know, is a Certified Information Systems Security Professional. And it's basically a certification that proves that you know a little bit about 10 bodies of knowledge in the security space. So, like what we talked about today crosses several, technical things, like would be one of those areas. It's very valuable in the right circumstances. It seems that if you study for it, the material is good. I am not a CISSP. I've thought about becoming one, but I don't know if it's necessary. Like if you're working in a space where they require it, then I think it can be of tremendous value to you. But just being a CISSP is not going to give you like the knowledge necessarily to actually say defend or attack. It seems to be know a little bit about a lot of things. And the other certs are, I will never say any education is of no value. I can't make that judgment call. But you have to ask, what do you want to get out of it? Like, why? And so for me, the reason I have not yet done the CISSP is it's not something my clients are demanding, and maybe in a different space it would be something that would make sense. But yeah, I'm still thinking about it, because to me it would just be fun to freshen up to, it's been 7 years since I graduated from an InfoSec program here, and you see a little bit of it, but you don't always see the big picture. There's a lot more to it than what we get to deal with day in, day out.
And like industry-specific examples too, that
Probably, yeah. One of the sections I remember like being so foreign to me was physical security. Like apparently those like heavy concrete planters out in front of buildings is not just for show. No idea. Like these are like bomb-proof barricades to keep like trucks from driving up like filled with explosives. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot. So and it's the flower pet. It's nice.
Wait, those are really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, some people just outright put up the grids. Like I remember when they first did it in perimeter in front of like, I forget that side store, is the Macy's and there's this other store, I think Nordstrom's. So somebody had driven through there before, so they just put up newer ones to where a car can't quite fit in between them. So when a car hit,
a smart car.
The car will hit. So you have a smart car.
Well, it's like the serpentine routes, like you'll see like a military bases. I don't know if you walk, you have to like, yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can't drive in a straight line, and they have lines of fire if they want to. That's
the world's really not that low.
Okay.
I ran off the mistake.
Well, is that why like that parking meter thing down in that lot? Is that what you're talking about? Like there's two big holes in front of it, so I assume you can just run your car through it and grab a bunch of money.
If you get annoyed.
I was thinking about that this morning, like ran back to it and then not have to pay.
Yeah.
The machine.
It's like the rental car return lot. Do not back up. You will shred the tires.
Oh, man,
yeah.
that's scary.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm almost worried about my bank security. I don't
Yeah,
care
me
what
too.
my Facebook password, you can have my Facebook password.
My Facebook password is better than my bank password. That's what ticks me off about the security situation.
That's.
But there's a lot of
ironic,
personal data in
but-
there. There's buying
Oh,
behaviors,
tremendous.
study.
One of the things I do with Facebook personally is I just don't put anything at all up there that I don't intend to be public, even if I have it at a more private setting. Like I don't put stuff up that's
Like, why would you even do that? Like,
yeah.
doesn't make
Yeah, I
sense.
hate when people complain about privacy on Facebook. I'm like, you chose to post that. You
Mhm.
chose to make
Oh,
it
and
public.
stuff talk about, oh, they hacked my cloud. Why do you have this out on the net?
Yeah.
Why do you?
There was a TV commercial where it was a woman posted on Facebook, I'm going for a week-long vacation, and then this whole thing popped up. It was like a guy with a ski mask on it and said, have a nice trip.
Yeah.
That's funny. So yeah,
Can you really turn on somebody's webcam?
there is an attack for that. Absolutely.
But what about my phone camera?
Do you know it?
I don't have a demonstration. I don't have a demonstration lined up for
She
that
thinks
one.
How do you
it's
turn
like
on the
secretly
shower
like the
cam?
stealth hacker he was talking about. That's who he is.
Is there
Well,
a
he
shower
answers these-
cam?
I'm
No,
an
he doesn't.
attorney too, so you answer these questions like, there is an attack for that.
They have a website dedicated to just showing default password cameras around the world.
Oh, nice.
It's like
Awesome.
all the default password cameras, and they just type it in. They just go in every place, and it does an autofill, and it does default, and they just show streaming live, like baby monitors, like everything, like
Yeah.
security for businesses.
Oh, that's one of the biggest things. It's like
They just
how many
posted
people
us
have
their
default
entertainment.
passwords still? Like, and that's classic. Classic. Like, oh, what's the Cisco default? Excellent, I'm in. You know, like they're like make the guys work harder than that. At least change your passwords.
Make them work for it.
More
Yeah.
about open source.
Can't have it that easy.
Pardon, what about open source?
No, I was just laughing
Oh,
at it. You guys
okay.
like believe in open source.
I do believe in open source.
So are you two all OWASP brothers, Chuck Norris and Chuck Norris?
We're not.
Me, Frank, and Aaron are gonna start a rock band.
Yeah.
or film like a Brady Bunch knockoff, our own rendition.
So, yeah. I'm being.
Are you guys more scared, or are you feeling
Both.
I'm informed about why I'm scared.
Yeah, exactly.
Scarily.
My fear has a
I'm
face.
now
I
a
don't want to
little
go
fearful
outside.
of the knowledge I now know.
Well, hopefully,
Go unplug everything.
Unplug
so that book
Because
on
now
top.
if I get sued, I could, an hour ago I could have said I didn't know. Now I'm
You're totally,
negligent. I knew the knowledge.
totally negligent.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
kind of wish I didn't know.
Well,
Tell
Ignorance
everybody
is
else there.
bliss.
There's a difference between negligence and gross negligence and all these other ideas.
They'll have to
I believe
subpoena
hers.
us.
I believe hers is gross.
They'll have to subpoena us to testify that you actually heard this information. We can just say that Frank's answers were so vague that
That's right.
That I was unable to.
unable to form
And I'll have to burn
an
this.
accurate.
Oh yeah. Well, the book.
It depends on the deal the prosecution offers me.
The book. Honestly, right now, when you're a victim of a data breach, right now you're by and large not being treated like you're at fault, but that could potentially change in the future if it becomes like there are standards that are just not being held up. That's like how, like finance stuff, if the books are being done officially or not correctly, then there are severe consequences to the financial officers in the corporation. If the technology is not being stewarded in a way that is in line with norms, then one day we could have a situation where technical directors are held accountable for
The
negligence.
CTO should be held.
Right.
The CTO of Target probably needs to.
CEO I
Higher
think
up.
resigned, yeah. The Security on Rails book is a little dated, but I think all the principles still hold true. That's the only holistic security book that is Rails-centric that I know of. I might have to write one, but that's the only one right now. Another one that's really good is The Tangled Web. I have it on my Kindle, so I don't have it with me to show.
If you write one, turn it into a PhD.
Really? A PDF or you mean?
A PhD.
Oh, like get a PhD.
Yeah, rather
Yeah.
than just writing it and you're not getting a whole lot of money.
Yeah, that's true.
Turn it into a PhD.
And another good one, the Tao of network security monitoring is one that I'm working through. And it has a lot to do with how do you monitor like I'm really working through the problem of how, so now that we have like the cloud and we have worker nodes doing things and we have a situation where people don't want to pay to buy fancy security systems, how do we go back down to the basics of like log collection and analysis and do almost like an old school ISS style, like, you know, heads up of what's going on with the application and deployment and able to. And I think that's something that large organizations do, but oftentimes our startups that we work with don't have that infrastructure. And so how can we build that with just open source tools so that it's not unapproachable? But then it becomes, you know, whose job is it to watch, and, you know, what is incident response? So it's like monitoring an incident response side of, you know, the web application space. So it kind of fascinates me.
Since they're making new stuff all the time, isn't it kind of like the first scout in like a soldier patrol? Like the first guy's gonna get hit, no matter what. But we'll all respond after we take that one initial casualty.
Yeah.
Like, are you guys trying to adapt, like, defensive-wise? Like, how do I penetrate this myself, and what do I do to defend it? Like, do you guys look at that, or who's thinking of that? Teenagers who just grew up in code?
I don't know.
Anyway.
I don't know. Cool. Yeah. You get, like, how do you have herd immunity? I mean, that's the classic network effects of security across things. I mean, that's what, you know, like Symantec always tried to sell, like with endpoint security and stuff. And there's a lot of security companies that do that. But again, we're back to the problem. The people we tend to work with won't buy those systems. They don't see the risk. They don't see the value. So that's the problem with stuff that's in the security space, which is why I'm so keen on what can we do specifically and tactically in the user story gathering process, in the business modeling process, in the code development process, to make this as secure as possible so that the system is more resilient against attack. Definitely not immune, because again, all of these tools that are available at the network layer are often seen as exotic technical security controls that are for like banks and governments that have real security problems. Our little startup doesn't have this, so no, we're not going to spend any time or money on that.
Yeah, they should probably look at like car insurance, but like, but I don't ever drive my car. You're like, do I really need insurance?
Yeah.
It's not a threat. I'm not going 80.
But some industries are having like industry standards like banking, you know,
Sure.
or they're starting to develop them at least.
Right.
I don't think that they're fully baked. And I think that just came out in the past year or so.
And there's things like PCI DSS. So that's the payment card industry digital security standards. That's the whole, you don't store unencrypted credit card numbers in your database, and any system that touches a credit card number has, and it has, you know, it's like 47 pages of like bedtime reading, but I mean it basically has a long checklist of things that you should do. But here's the thing to think about. Target and Depot are PCI compliant.
That's where the real money is.
So, yeah, I'm just saying, even doing everything doesn't mean that you have done enough. And so, I believe a claim on some of those was, yeah, we knew what to do. Like, hey, our IT group had all these ideas to make security better, and, you know, but we were told, hey, you know, we bought this other system, we're good. Like, no, don't spend time on that.
So by being minimally compliant, they said that they had avoided a responsibility to do more.
Yeah.
So setting those standards might be counterproductive in a way, because
Security by checklist. We checked all the boxes.
Right.
Why are you still talking about this? Like, you know, we have other important things to take care of.
so if you're a hospital and you say, you know, to be HIPAA compliant, I did X, Y, Z, and my information was still stolen, but I did what I needed to do, so
Yes.
I avoided any liability.
Right.
And you can make that argument.
Yeah, you can. I mean, at some point you can only do what you can do. I mean, you don't know. But again, this goes back to the, so you were fully compliant, were you negligent, and does it matter? Like, you still suffer consequences, right? But maybe you weren't negligent. Whereas if you didn't do anything, maybe you're very negligent. So.
But did you feel like to a certain point you're like selling like life insurance or car insurance? Well, if if it happened.
When it happened.
When it happened.
Yes.
Life insurance, yeah, that's when it happens.
If it happens.
No, it's happening.
When it happens.
It's coming down
during the term of your life insurance policy.
Yeah, your lifeline.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the mentality.
If it happens. Let's just talk hypothetically.
Yeah, the mentality of like an IT guy at a big company or CTO might say, well, we've already covered our boxes.
Yeah. And maybe they did. And maybe that's actually enough. I'm not going to say that that's the wrong decision. It's just something to think about. You know, I can do a lot of things and be morally good with doing it and still, wow, we got hacked. I mean, it's the inevitability, right? What I can't do as an individual, as a professional, like professional ethics basis, I can't ignore the knowledge of the things and specifically not put in place technical countermeasures that are appropriate for the situation just because my boss wants to save for, a week and, some number of thousands of dollars on a project that's been going on for years. And it's not even a reasonable, and the only reason he doesn't want to do it is all he sees is shiny features, like more user stories, and the next, and the next. That's where I have to draw the line and say, no, it does not work that way. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway.
It's a fire insurance.
I guess it is kind of like that, isn't it? So, anyway. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.
This video has been sponsored by Rietta Incorporated. Learn more today at rietta.com.